Hi, Kipsters. Hi, families. Welcome to today's writing. So, I heard in tech study, you all learn about the really cool story elements that are in Cinderella stories. Miss Miller came up with this amazing idea to make a connection between tech study and writing. I don't know about you, but I thought that was a great idea too. So today in writing, we're going to use what you all have learned in tech study to come up with our very own Cinderella stories. Now, you might think, Miss Ross, I cannot do that, but you totally can. You know the story elements that are in Cinderella stories, and that's going to help you come up with your own Cinderella story. You can come up with your own character names and all these really, really cool things that you've learned in tech study. But it's okay if you forgot those story elements because we're about to go over them right now. So, when we're thinking about the elements of a Cinderella story, we want to think about these few things when planning our story. First, you have to have a beginning of your story. In the beginning of your story, you always want to talk about the characters that are in your story and the setting. We all know that the setting is where the story takes place. So that's the first part. Beginning of your story, what characters are in your story, and where does your story take place? While writing a Cinderella story, you also need to have some type of problem. What problem does your main character have in the story? After you include your problem, you need to come up with a really cool magical helper that helps the main character solve their problem. Then you want to order the steps or sequence your events of what happened in your story. Remember, we did that earlier in writing. We talked about what happened first in the story, what happened next, and what happened last. That's just a simpler way of talking about sequencing of events. So you're thinking about what happened first in your story, what happened next, and what happened last. If you have a problem in your story needs to end with some type of resolution. How did your problem get solved? And at the end of your story, find a way to close out your entire story so it has a really, really nice ending to it. So let's review. First, you need a problem that includes the beginning of your story, which is the character and the setting. Then you need to talk about the problem that your main character faces. You then need to have a really cool and really sweet magical helper that can help the main character in your story. Then you want to make sure while you're writing all of this, you sequence your events of what happened first, next, and last. You need to have a resolution to the problem that you stated in your story and find a way to wrap your entire story up. Seems like a lot, but I know you all can do it. Let's look at my outline that I use to help me plan my story. So here's my outline. In the beginning, my main character's name is Ella. She has two mean stepsisters, and their names are Jane and Jessie. Her stepmother's name is Samantha, and my story takes place in a suburb in Illinois. The problem in my story is that Ella is not able to go to her best friend's birthday party. That's so not cool, is it? Her magical helper is her fairy godmother, and her name is Brittany. I can't wait until you all find out more about Brittany and my story. Then I made a quick outline to put my events in order. This way, when I write my story, I know what happens first, next, and last. First, Ella asked to go to a party, but her stepmother said no. Next, she was so upset, but her fairy godmother came and helped her. And last, Ella made it to the party and back home in time before anyone saw her. So I need to make sure those things happen in order when I write my story. Super, super important. So let's go back to my problem. At first, my problem was Ella wasn't able to go to her best friend's party. But my resolution, or how my problem got solved, is that Ella's godmother, her fairy godmother Brittany, helped her with a fancy outfit and a ride to her best friend's party. And then, to close out my story, I'm going to talk about how it was a busy night, but Ella wouldn't change anything about it. She enjoyed her night just that much. Now let's see how I put all 6 of these things together to make a pretty amazing Cinderella story. I said, Ella, her stepsisters Jane and Jessie, and her stepmother Samantha lived in a beautiful home in Illinois. Everyone had big bedrooms with walk-in closets. Everyone but Ella. She was put in the attic with only one window and a squeaky bed. After cleaning the entire house, Ella asked her stepmother if she can go to her best friend's birthday party that night. As usual, her stepmother was so mean and told her she couldn't go. Then her fairy godmother, Brittany, appeared. "We don't have much time," Brittany said. "I brought you some clothes and a gift to take to your friend for her birthday. We have to get you dressed quickly. We don't want your stepmother and stepsisters to hear you." Ella was so shocked. She couldn't believe what was happening. She followed her godmother's instructions and got dressed. Before she knew it, she was climbing out of her window and in a car. At 10:30 p.m., she gave her best friend her birthday gift and left. She had 30 minutes to make it back home before her stepmother realized she was gone. Ella moved as fast as she could. At 10:58 p.m., she made it back to her room and got in bed. She heard her stepmother passing by her room to make sure she was there. It was a crazy night out, but Ella enjoyed every second of it. Whoa. My story was jam-packed with so many details and those 6 really important things that we had to make sure we included in the Cinderella story. The more details you have, the better. You want your Cinderella story to be so amazing that the person reading it can almost picture what's happening in your story. I was so descriptive and made sure I talked about the characters in the setting. I told you the problem in my story. I told you the magical helper that helped my main character, Ella. I told you what happened first, next, and last in my story. I had a resolution to my problem or how my problem got solved. And I had a cool way of closing out my story. I made sure that my outline was really detailed and straightforward so that when I went to write my story, it was so easy. Now you're going to do the same exact thing. I'm so excited to see what Cinderella stories you all come up with. But before you get started, don't forget what you have to include in your story. First, you need to have the beginning. Where are your characters? Where does your story take place? Then you need to come up with a problem. Also, add a magical helper. It could be anyone you want that helps the main character in your story. Make sure you tell us what happens first, next, and last. Come up with a way your problem gets solved and find a way to close out your entire story. This is an amazing opportunity to be so detailed, so descriptive, and come up with a story that's your own. You all can come up with your own character names, your own magical helpers. It's actually fair game. You get to do anything you want as long as you include these 6 really, really important things. Remember, after you're done writing your story, take a picture of it and send it to your teacher, and you might get shouted out on our Instagram page. I literally cannot wait to see what amazing stories you all come up with. Bye, Kipsters. Bye, families.